Welcome to Lesson 7 of our unit on survival. Today, we're going to focus on writing. Specifically, we'll be learning how to write an advice blog using imperatives. Imagine you're an expert on survival, and you want to share your knowledge with others. Writing a blog is a great way to do that. In today's lesson, you'll learn how to give clear, direct advice using imperative sentences, which are perfect for telling people what they should or shouldn't do in survival situations. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to create your own advice blog post, filled with helpful tips and instructions for surviving in the wild. So, let's get started and see how you can use your writing skills to help others stay safe in challenging situations. Let's move on to Activity 1. In this activity, we'll be reading a blog written by someone named Than. The title of the blog is, How to Survive at School. First, let's think about who this blog is meant for. Than has written this blog to give advice to other students on how they can manage their school life effectively. Now, let's focus on the advice Than gives about schoolwork. According to the blog, Than advises, don't get behind with your work. You should pay attention in class and do your homework. This is really practical advice, isn't it? Than is emphasizing the importance of staying on top of your studies, making sure you pay attention in class, and completing your homework regularly. These are key strategies for doing well in school. Let's take a moment to reflect. Do you follow this advice in your own schoolwork? How do you think it could help you if you start following these tips more closely? Great! Understanding and following advice like Than's can really help you succeed in school. Now, let's move on to the next part of our lesson. Now let's move on to Activity 2. In this activity, we're going to complete the key phrases with words from Than's blog that we just read. Let's look at the key phrases for giving advice. It's a good idea to. What did Than suggest? Yes, it's a good idea to join clubs. Clubs can help you make friends and enjoy school more. You should. Than advised us that we should pay attention in class. Staying focused during lessons is really important to keep up with your schoolwork. It's important to. Than also mentioned that it's important to arrive on time for lessons. Being punctual helps you stay organized and not miss any important information. If you need help. Finally, Than said if you need help, ask your teachers. Don't be afraid to reach out if you're struggling with something. Let's fill in these phrases together. Take a moment to write them down, and then we'll review them as a class. Great job, everyone. These key phrases are really useful when you're giving advice. Remember, using clear and direct language like this can help others understand exactly what they need to do. Let's focus on today's language point, which is all about imperatives. Imperatives are commands, instructions, or advice that tell someone what to do. They are direct sentences and usually start with a verb. For example, when we say, pay attention in class, or do your homework, we're using imperatives. Imperatives are very common in giving advice, like what we saw in Than's blog earlier. They are simple, clear, and to the point, which makes them perfect for telling someone exactly what they should do. We'll be practicing how to use imperatives today in our writing activity. It's important to remember that imperatives can be positive or negative. Positive imperative, bring a water bottle. Negative imperative, don't forget your map. As we move forward, think about how you can use imperatives to give advice or instructions clearly. Let's practice using them in some examples together. Now let's try activity 3. For this activity, I want you to cover the text we read earlier about Than's blog. Let's see if you can remember the advice he gave. We have both affirmative and negative imperatives here. Take a look at the sentences on the screen and try to complete them based on what you remember. For the affirmative sentences, stay confident, dress well. For the negative sentences, 3. Don't get behind with work. 4. Don't panic. Take a moment to fill in the blanks. Think about what advice Than gave and how these imperatives were used. Once you've filled them in, you can read the text again to check your answers and see if you remembered correctly. Great! Let's quickly go over the answers together. How many of you remembered all the advice correctly? It's important to be able to recall these imperatives, as they are useful not just in writing, but also in speaking when giving advice or instructions. Well done. Now let's move on to the next part of our lesson. Let's move on to activity 4. In this activity, you'll be completing the imperative sentences with the correct verbs from the box at the top. Take a look at the verbs we have: arrive, be, organize, worry. These verbs are what you'll need to complete each of the imperative sentences below. Let's go through them together. Don't be afraid to say what you think. This imperative encourages confidence and honesty. Don't worry about problem people. Here, the advice is to not let difficult people bother you. Organize your study time. This imperative is about managing your time effectively. Don't arrive late for lessons. This is a reminder to be punctual and show up on time. Take a moment to write down the correct verbs in each sentence. Once you've done that, we'll review them together to make sure everyone has the right answers. Great! Let's go over the answers now. How did you do? Imperatives are very straightforward, but they're also very important in giving clear instructions and advice. Keep practicing, and you'll get even better at using them in your writing and speaking. Now that we've practiced using imperatives and reviewed how to give advice, it's time to put it all into action. We're going to move on to our writing activity. Today, you'll have the opportunity to write your own advice blog. Think about a situation where someone might need advice. Perhaps it's about surviving at school, staying healthy, or preparing for an adventure like the Desert Challenge. As you write, remember to use imperatives to give clear and direct advice. For example, you might say, "Stay hydrated," or "Don't forget to bring a map." The goal is to make your advice easy to understand and helpful for the reader. Take your time, be creative, and think about how your advice can really make a difference for someone reading your blog. Let's get started. Grab your pencils or open your laptops, and begin writing your advice blog. I'm here if you need any help or inspiration. Now we're moving on to activity 5. This is where you get to put everything you've learned into practice by writing your own blog post. Your task is to write a short blog, about 60 to 80 words, for students with the title How to Survive Homework. Follow the steps in the writing guide. 1. Think about the advice you want to give. What are the most important tips for managing homework effectively? 2. Remember to use imperatives to give clear instructions, just like we've practiced. For example, you might say, "Start your homework early," or "Don't forget to take breaks." 3. Keep your blog concise and to the point, focusing on the most essential advice. Once you've completed your blog, Double-check your work to make sure it's clear and helpful. Take your time, and if you need any help or have questions, I'm here to assist you. Let's see what great advice you can come up with for surviving homework. As you finish writing your blog post for Activity 5, it's important to go through a checklist to ensure that your work is clear, accurate, and effective. Let's review the key points you should check. Your use of imperatives. Make sure you've used imperatives correctly to give clear instructions and advice. Remember, imperatives are commands or suggestions that start with a verb, like, do your homework, or, don't forget to study. Should and shouldn't. Check if you've included advice using should and shouldn't where appropriate. This helps to guide the reader on what they ought to do or avoid. First conditional. Look for opportunities where you might use the first conditional, such as, if you finish your homework early, you can relax for the rest of the evening. This structure is great for offering advice based on possible outcomes. The neatness of your report. Make sure your writing is clear and easy to read. Good organization and neatness help the reader focus on your message without any distractions. Spelling. Finally, double-check your spelling. Mistakes can sometimes change the meaning of your advice or make it harder to understand. Go through your blog with this checklist in mind, and make any necessary improvements before you submit it. Taking a few extra minutes to review your work will help you produce the best possible blog. Before we wrap up today's lesson, let's go over your homework assignments. Learn by heart all the structures. Make sure to review and memorize all the language structures we covered today, especially the use of imperatives. This will help you feel more confident using them in your writing and speaking. Workbook. Complete the exercises on the assigned page in your workbook. These exercises will give you more practice with the structures and concepts we learned today. Remember, practicing at home is just as important as what we do in class, so take your time with these assignments and make sure you understand everything. If you have any questions or need help, you can always ask me in the next class or reach out before then. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.